Imagine, imagine for a second that you are looking at your computer desktop,
Okay, I'm picturing it.
and sitting right there, like dead center on the screen, is this highly compressed zip file.
Just a single file.
Yeah, just one single file. But you are told that inside this little icon is the exact unedited source code for the entire universe.
Oh, wow.
Right? It contains every single event of the past, the complete reality of the present moment, and literally every possible iteration of the future.
That is big five.
Is the ultimate file. But there's a massive catch.
Of course there is.
When you go to click on it,
Yeah.
you realize that the universe itself simply does not possess the audio software required to play the name of this file out loud.
It can't process the audio.
Exactly. It's too massive. It's too dense with the raw data of existence for any physical sound wave to carry it.
That is such a wild concept.
It really is. And today, we're going completely down the rabbit hole to explore a word that is, well, mathematically perfect, cosmologically enormous,
Yeah.
and by its very nature, totally unpronounceable.
It's a concept that really forces a total reevaluation of how human beings interact with reality.
Oh, absolutely.
Because when the foundational truth of your universe cannot be spoken, you're forced to abandon conventional linguistics. You have to enter this space where math and ancient cosmology and human psychology all just kind of collide.
And what a collision it is. So, welcome to the Nate Helen Podcast. I'm so glad you're joining us today because our mission is to embark on a deep dive into an essay that is equal parts fascinating, frustrating, and just totally mind-bending.
Yeah, that's a perfect description of it.
The text is titled, Why Havayah is a Gnostic Diet.
Which is a heavy title.
Super heavy. But we're going to journey through the mechanics of ancient numerology, explore entirely alternative interpretations of the Genesis creation myth, like involving celestial bodies.
Right, the sun and the moon.
Yes. And we'll dip our toes into the idea of holographic realities in Eden and ultimately question the very nature and the failure of human language itself.
There is so much ground to cover here.
There really is. Okay, let's unpack this. Because the author actually puts a warning label on this essay right out of the gate.
They do, yeah. They explicitly tell the reader that the text is purposefully going to be confusing.
Right. And the wild part about that warning is that the confusion isn't like a byproduct of poor writing.
No, not at all.
Confusion is the intended destination.
Yeah. And to set the stakes for you listening right now, do not mistake this for some dusty academic theological treatise that we are analyzing just for historical trivia.
Please don't. It's so much more than that.
It really is. The core of what we are exploring today is the human obsession with categorization.
Yes.
It's this brilliant examination of why the ultimate source of reality constantly slips through our fingers the very moment we believe we've pinned it down with a definition.
It's like trying to hold on to water.
Exactly. It asks a terrifying question, honestly. What if our desire to neatly label the universe is the exact thing keeping us from actually understanding it?
I love that framing. I really do. And to understand that slipping feeling, the text starts with the ultimate slippery word.
And the unpronounceable name.
Yes. The entire foundation of this essay revolves around the unpronounceable name of God in the Jewish tradition.
Right.
The author uses this colloquial term, Havayah, to refer to what is typically printed in English translations as the all-caps Lord.
Which is an important distinction to make early on.
Yeah, totally. Now, the author admits right away that they are extremely reluctant to dive into the math. They really, really don't want to become a numerologist.
Nobody sets out wanting to do gematria if they can help it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But they feel entirely forced into doing the math because this name, Havayah, has absolutely no official phonetic value. It literally has no sound.
Which requires us to clarify a really crucial historical and linguistic distinction that the text makes.
Oh, right, about the reverence thing.
Yeah, because it's a super common misconception that the name is unpronounced simply because of a moral rule.
Like, don't take the name in vain.
Right, like it's just a commandment that leads to reverent silence. And while reverence definitely plays a part in the broader culture today, the author points to a much more structural issue.
A physical limitation.
Yes. The actual historical record of its original pronunciation is completely lost to time. We are talking about a total linguistic void here.
They literally just don't know how to say it anymore.
Exactly. They do not have an unbroken oral tradition that preserves the exact vowels and the cadence of how that word was sounded by, like, the ancient high priests.
It's almost maddening for historians and linguists, isn't it?
Oh, it drives them crazy.
Because the author points out how, over the centuries, you have all these external groups constantly trying to force a confession out of Jewish scholars.
Like they're hiding it.
Yes. You have people constructing these elaborate linguistic theories, pointing fingers and saying, look, based on ancient regional dialects, it absolutely must be pronounced Yahweh. Or others claiming it's Jehovah. Or, as the text mentions, groups claiming the definitive pronunciation is Yahah, based on the Lashon Kadash, the Holy Tongue.
They're desperate for a definitive answer.
They are practically shaking the texts, desperate to crack the phonetic code, hoping to unlock some secret mystical sound of power.
And the author treats those attempts with a certain level of tragic irony, honestly.
Tragic irony is the perfect way to put it.
Because any attempt to force that pronunciation or demand a confession of the quote-unquote real sound is fundamentally futile.
Right.
The culture reluctantly refuses to cooperate with these inquisitions, not because they are fiercely guarding a secret sound behind closed doors, but because there is no secret to give up anymore.
The safe is empty.
Exactly. The key to the lock has been missing for millennia.
So if the sound is entirely gone, if the audio software can't play the zip file, to go back to our analogy, what are we actually left with?
Well, you have the letters themselves.
Right. How do you relate to a core concept that you can't say out loud? The text provides this really beautiful explanation. It suggests that the letters themselves act as an acronym.
A visual compression of time.
Yes, a visual compression of time.
Let's break down the mechanics of that acronym because I think it really explains the majesty of the concept.
Let's do it.
So the name is composed of 4 Hebrew letters, Yod, He, Vav, and He.
The Tetragrammaton.
Right. The text suggests that these letters are basically an amalgamation of the Hebrew verbs for existence.
Okay, so how does that work?
Well, you have He, which means was, or the past.
Got it.
You have Hava, which means is, or the present. And you have Yihe, which means will be, or the future.
That brings us right back to that zip file analogy from the beginning. It isn't just a name.
No, not at all.
It is an equation of total existence. It contains the entirety of the past, the entirety of the present, and the entirety of the future, all compressed into 4 completely silent letters.
It's mind-blowing when you really sit with it.
It really is. And it makes sense why the physical universe wouldn't be able to vocalize it.
How could it?
Right. How could a physical universe, which experiences time linearly, 1 second after another, possibly produce a single sound that articulates the past, the present, and the future simultaneously?
It's physically impossible.
The text argues that the concept of Havayah actually predates the existence of sound itself. The sound of creation is a byproduct, but the name is the source code.
Think about the massive cognitive shift that occurs in a culture when its central ultimate truth operates this way.
What do you mean?
Well, we, as modern humans, navigate our world primarily through auditory and phonetic language. We speak to define things.
If I want a coffee, I say the word coffee.
Exactly. But when your ultimate word is a silent visual acronym of time, it forces the human mind away from auditory processing.
Oh, I see.
It demands that you engage with the symbolic, the visual, and ultimately the mathematical. If you cannot speak the word to understand its shape, you have to measure it.
Which is exactly how our very reluctant author gets dragged, kicking and screaming, into the world of gematria.
Really didn't want to go there.
They fought it. But since we can't speak the zip file, we have to calculate its file size. We have to look at the math underlying the letters.
You have to measure the silence.
Yes. So let's explore the hidden mathematics of this unpronounceable name. The text introduces the concept of gematria and specifically points out that the numerical value assigned to Havayah is 26.
And for those listening who might be unfamiliar with the mechanics of gematria, it is essential to understand that this isn't like an arbitrary code invented later to sound mystical.
It's not a secret decoder ring.
No, it's just how they counted. In ancient Hebrew, there were no separate symbols for numbers like the Arabic numerals 1, 2, 3 that we use today.
Right, they didn't have separate shapes for numbers and letters.
Exactly. The letters of the alphabet doubled as the numbers used for everyday counting and commerce. Aleph is 1, Bet is 2, Gimel is 3, and so on.
So buying bread involved adding up letters.
Essentially, yes. So every single word inherently has a mathematical value based on the sum of its letters.
Okay, so let's actually do the math on the 4 letters of the name Havayah.
Let's do it.
We have Yod, which is 10, He, which is 5, Vav, which is 6, and the final He, which is another 5.
Simple addition.
Right. 10 plus 5 plus 6 plus 5 equals 26.
There's the number.
Now, on the surface, 26 just seems like a random even number. Like, okay, cool, it's 26. But the author emphasizes that within the logic of quote-unquote proper gematria, 26 is profoundly significant,
Highly significant.
specifically because of how it breaks down into factors. The text zeroes in on the fact that 26 is exactly 13 multiplied by 2.
And the factorization is where the philosophy really begins here.
How so?
Because in this mathematical language, 13 is not an unlucky number like we think of it today in the West. It is the exact gematria of the Hebrew word eshad.
And A translates to 1.
Precisely. Let's do the math on that one too. Aleph is 1, Chet is 8, Dalet is 4.
1 plus 8 plus 4.
Equals 13. So the foundational value of the word for 1 for absolute unity is 13.
Wow.
Therefore, when the name of the divine equates to 26, it is mathematically expressing the concept of 13 times 2.
Which is?
Or, as the text beautifully puts it, the one presented as 2.
Okay, I really have to push back on this logic for a second, because when I first read this section, my brain just threw up a massive error code.
Yeah, it's counterintuitive at first.
It really is. If
Yeah.
we are talking about an ultimate, perfect divine source, the defining characteristic is usually its singularity, right? Its oneness.
Monotheism 101.
Exactly. If you take the number that literally represents 1 and you multiply it by 2, doesn't that inherently dilute the unity?
You'd think so.
Doesn't the introduction of a 2 create a division that ruins the whole concept of perfect oneness?
And that is the exact paradox the author is asking you to wrestle with. Our instinct is to view 2 as a fracture of 1, a split.
Right, like cutting an apple in half.
But the text argues the complete opposite. Multiplying the value of 1 by 2 doesn't dilute the oneness. It brings it to a state of ultimate perfection and completeness.
Wait, how? How does adding a boundary, or like a second element, create perfection?
Because a solitary 1, a concept existing completely alone, with no reflection, no dialogue, and no counterpart, is conceptually stagnant.
It's just sitting there.
Exactly. It cannot express love, it cannot create, it cannot communicate, because there is absolutely nothing outside of itself to receive those actions.
Now it's completely isolated.
The author uses a highly specific phrase here. They state that when the 1 is presented as 2, it signifies total completeness with absolutely no room for lack.
Oh, because everything is contained within that dynamic.
Right. And the text delivers this incredible philosophical quip. It says, when you get to have yourself to talk to, who else do you need indeed?
When you get to have yourself to talk to, who else do you need? That is such a vivid, almost, I don't know, claustrophobic image of self-sufficiency.
It is.
It's the ultimate closed loop.
It is a closed loop of infinite potential. And this very specific 2-in-1 concept, this completeness achieved through doubling, acts as a massive signpost pointing the author directly toward Gnosticism.
Oh, right. The dyads.
Specifically, the text connects this mathematical doubling to the Gnostic concept of the dyads.
Let's make sure we ground this for the listener, because Gnosticism can get incredibly complex really fast.
It's a very deep well.
We are talking about ancient religious and philosophical systems that heavily influenced and rivaled early Christianity.
Very much so.
And in Gnostic thought, you have this idea of the ultimate unknowable God, which they often call the monad.
The pure one.
Right. But the monad is so pure, so unified, and so alien to our physical reality that it literally can't directly interact with a messy physical universe.
The physical universe in Gnostic cosmology is almost always viewed as inherently flawed, dense, and disconnected from the pure light of the monad.
It's too dirty for the monad to touch.
Basically, yeah. So how does an utterly pure, unified source create a flawed physical world?
How does it build the house without touching the dirt?
It does so through a series of step-down transformers. These are emanations, spiritual principles that cascade out from the monad.
Like layers of delegation.
Exactly. And these emanations often manifest in pairs as male and female principles. These pairs are the dyads.
So the dyads are the 13 multiplied by 2 in action.
You've got it.
They are the 1 presenting itself as 2 so that it can actually do something.
So it can interact with lower realms.
And the text notes that we later find these dyadic emanations intimately involved in the actual construction of physical matter, working in tandem with a figure known as the demiurge, or the craftsman.
The introduction of the demiurge is a critical piece of this puzzle.
Who is the demiurge, exactly?
Well, the monad envisions the creation, right? The pure thought. But it is the demiurge, the craftsman, who actually gets his hands dirty molding the clay of the physical universe.
So the demiurge is the blue-collar worker of the cosmos.
Exactly. The demiurge is the active, often flawed, creator of the material realm.
So just synthesizing this so far, we have this unpronounceable acronym of time that mathematically breaks down to the concept of unity doubled.
Right.
That doubled unity perfectly mirrors the Gnostic idea of dyads.
Yes.
And those dyads partner with a craftsman to build the material world because the ultimate source is too pure to touch the dirt.
Consider what this says about human psychology, though, and our desperate need to anthropomorphize the infinite.
What do you mean, like giving it a human face?
Yeah. The ultimate source of reality, that silent zip file, is terrifying in its vastness. It is completely unknowable.
We can't hug a zip file.
Exactly. We cannot relate to an infinite acronym of time. We need faces. We need dialogue. We need narrative.
Right.
The demiurge and the Gnostic dyads act as a psychological and cosmological bridge. They span the incomprehensible gap between a perfect silent one and the noisy, dualistic, chaotic material world that you and I wake up in every single day.
That makes so much sense.
We literally require the two in order to process the existence of the one.
Which provides the perfect logical transition into one of the most famous and fiercely debated puzzles in the entire Genesis creation narrative.
Yes, the pronoun.
We are talking about the ultimate plural puzzle. So the text has established this foundational two-in-one creator concept through math and Gnosticism.
Right.
It then takes that exact lens and focuses it directly on the incredibly famous verse from Genesis chapter 1, verse 26.
Let us make man in our image.
Let us, the celestial let us.
It is perhaps the most heavily scrutinized pronoun in all of ancient literature.
Seriously, who on earth is the us?
Everyone has an opinion.
The text is very quick to point out that theological factions have been waging war over this single word for centuries.
Oh, millennia.
You have traditional Christian theologians who point to that verse and confidently claim, aha, look at the plural pronoun. This is clear, ancient proof that the Trinity was present and operating from the very beginning of Genesis.
They see it as a prophecy, essentially.
Right. And then you have their theological opponents who fire back, calling that interpretation complete historical nonsense.
Because it's anachronistic.
Exactly. They accuse them of retrofitting much later complex theology onto an ancient Semitic text that had absolutely no concept of a Trinity.
It is a textbook example of confirmation bias, honestly, where later readers project their current theological frameworks backward onto the source material.
And I deeply appreciate how the author of our text handles this.
They step right out of the crossfire.
They really do. They explicitly state they are not interested in taking a partisan side in that endless theological tug of war.
Which is refreshing.
Totally. They aren't trying to prove or disprove the Trinity. Instead, they offer a completely unexpected, geometrically fascinating context for who the us might actually be.
And just to echo the author for you listening, we aren't endorsing any specific religious viewpoint here either.
No, we're not.
We are simply following the brilliant, twisting trail of breadcrumbs this author has laid out for us. It's an exercise in logic.
Right. And following that internal logic, the author makes a brilliant deductive move.
It's so simple, it's profound.
They argue that if the phrase let us is being spoken within the narrative of the text, it must refer to agents that are already existent at that specific chronological moment in the creation timeline.
Right. You cannot invite someone to co-create if they have not yet been created themselves.
Exactly. If you are standing in an empty room, you can't say, hey, let's lift this couch to a person who hasn't walked in yet.
The timeline matters.
It totally matters.
Yeah.
So we have to look at the timeline of Genesis. Who was in the room right before humanity is created on the sixth day?
The author proposes that this cosmic couple that provides the image for mankind to be created as both male and female, is actually the sun and the moon.
The sun and the moon.
It is an incredibly poetic proposition.
It really is. And chronologically, it fits the narrative structure perfectly, doesn't it?
It does.
Yeah.
The celestial bodies, the greater light and the lesser light, were created on day 4. Mankind does not arrive until day 6.
So they are in the room.
Exactly. Therefore, the sun and moon are present, established, and fully functioning when the let us dialogue occurs.
But the wild thing is, the author doesn't just rely on the timeline. They back this up with a really deep dive into linguistic evidence from Semitic languages, which completely blew my mind.
The grammatical gender aspect?
Yes,
Yeah.
because in English, we think of the sun and the moon as inanimate objects.
They're just its.
Right, they're just glowing rocks or burning gas in the sky. It's an it. But the author points out that in languages like Arabic and Hebrew, nouns possess hardwired grammatical gender.
And the gender of nouns in ancient languages is a profoundly important tool for understanding how those cultures categorize the forces of nature.
They weren't just random assignments.
No, they reflected the ancient worldview. The author notes that in Arabic, the word for moon qamar is strictly masculine. In Hebrew, the word yarek can be masculine.
So the moon is a he.
Exactly.
Mhm.
And conversely, the sun, this blinding, life-giving, burning star, is unequivocally feminine in these linguistic traditions.
That feels backwards to Western mythology, where the sun is Apollo and the moon is Artemis.
Right, but in this specific linguistic context, the Hebrew word shemesh is feminine. The Arabic word shams is feminine.
So you have a masculine moon and a feminine sun, a literal cosmic dyad already hanging out in the sky, reigning over the day and the night, completely established before humans are even a thought.
The author is performing a masterclass in linguistic archaeology here.
They really are.
They are taking a grammatical quirk, the fact that Semitic languages assign male and female genders to astronomical bodies, and elevating it into a literal cosmological blueprint for the origin of human biology.
And here's where the visual aspect of this gets really interesting, conceptually, because the author pushes this idea to its absolute limit.
They take it all the way.
They claim that Adam, and when we say Adam here, the text implies the very first original human entity in a combined male and female form, was basically manufactured in the exact visual image of a solar eclipse.
This solar eclipse.
Yes.
It is a stunning, almost terrifying visual metaphor for the dawn of humanity.
Isn't it? I spent a long time trying to picture this when I was reading the essay.
How did you visualize it?
Well, the text describes it vividly. It says Adam's maleness, which is the representation of the moon, appeared to lay directly over his female aspect, which is the representation of the sun.
The overlapping geometry.
Exactly like the mechanics of a total eclipse, where the dark disk of the moon perfectly covers the blazing disk of the sun, leaving only that glowing corona around the edges.
It's a beautiful image.
So you have to completely discard the Sunday school image of early Adam as just like a standard biological guy walking around naked in a garden.
Yeah, that doesn't fit this model at all.
You have to picture this entity as a walking, breathing, celestial event. A cosmic eclipse made flesh and bone.
It requires a radical reframing of our relationship to the natural world.
Totally.
Modern humanity tends to view human origins strictly through the lens of terrestrial biology. You know, we are apes that stood up, or we are made from the literal dust of the earth.
We are grounded in the dirt.
Right. But if we view our origins through the lens of this text, where we are modeled after astronomical bodies, a masculine moon and a feminine sun aligning perfectly in the void, it elevates humanity from the dirt to the cosmos.
It gives us a celestial pedigree.
Exactly. In this interpretation, we aren't just an accident of Earth. We are made in the precise geometric and celestial image of the heavens.
I can hear the skeptics already, though.
Oh, for sure. The timeline argument.
Yeah, and so could the author, because the immediate pushback to this theory is obvious. If you look at the Genesis timeline, day 4 is the sun and moon.
Right.
But day 5 is the creation of the fish of the sea and the birds of the air.
So there's more company in the room.
Exactly. So by day 6, there are plenty of other things in the room besides the sun and the moon. Someone could easily argue, well, why couldn't God be talking to the fish or a flock of seagulls? Why couldn't the ewes be a great white shark and an eagle?
It's a fair, logical question based on the timeline alone.
And I found the author's response to this absolutely hilarious.
What did they say?
They don't try to mount this massive scholarly theological defense. They simply write that if confronted with that argument, they would just shrug and move on as though no noise has been made.
A magnificent, dismissive shrug.
Right. Just brushing it off entirely.
But while it is played for humor, there is a profound hierarchical reason for that shrug.
Oh, really? It's not just a joke.
No, the text is operating on an ancient understanding of cosmic hierarchy. The author explains that the sun and the moon actively exert dominion over the earth.
Okay, true. They govern the tides.
They govern the tides, they dictate the changing of the seasons, they control the fundamental rhythm of light and darkness that all life depends on.
They run the show.
But most importantly, the sun and the moon are completely, utterly unmoved by human actions.
We can't touch them.
We cannot touch them. We cannot alter their path. They are entirely sovereign in the sky.
Right. They're untouchable, like creators.
Yeah.
Whereas fish and birds, we can definitely affect them.
We share the earth with them.
We can hunt them, we can tame them, we can domesticate them, we can pollute their oceans.
Precisely. That hierarchy of influence is essential to the author's underlying argument. Fish and birds are subjects of the earth, just as we are.
They are on our level.
But the sun and the moon sit in a position of unassailable, untouchable authority. That sovereign distance makes them the only fitting templates, the only logical candidates for the us, to serve as the architectural blueprint for the creation of the dual-natured human.
Okay, let's take a breath and review where we are on this map.
Good idea.
We have established who is responsible for the blueprint of humans, the sun and the moon operating as a Gnostic dyad.
Check.
We know what geometric image they used, the overlapping disks of a solar eclipse.
Check.
Now, the deep dive shifts its focus into how and where this creation actually took place.
The location of Eden.
Yes, because as any biblical scholar will tell you, the text points out a massive, glaring contradiction between the two creation stories presented back-to-back in the book of Genesis.
Ah, yes. The jarring transition from the narrative of Genesis chapter 1 into the narrative of Genesis chapter 2.
It's like reading two completely different books.
It really is.
Yeah.
Scholars, historians, and theologians have debated the seams of these two texts for centuries.
What's the usual explanation?
Usually, the academic consensus is simply that they were written by two different authors at two different times and just smashed together later by an editor.
The documentary hypothesis.
Exactly. But our author rejects that easy out and takes a highly unconventional conceptual approach to reconciling the contradiction.
I loved this part. To set this up, let's look at the vibes of the two chapters because they could not be more different.
Let's do it.
The text notes that the Genesis 1 account is incredibly impersonal. It describes it as a top-to-bottom creation. It's distant, it's structural, it's almost mathematical.
It reads like an architect dictating a cosmic blueprint from afar.
Right, there is no physical interaction.
Yeah, none. The deity speaks, and reality simply conforms to the command. Let there be light. And the structural framework of the universe instantly expands to accommodate the light. It is cold and efficient.
Exactly. Boom. Done. Next day, let there be firmament. Boom. Done.
Very procedural.
But then you turn the page to Genesis chapter 2, and the entire atmosphere shifts.
Radically.
The text points out that Genesis 2 is intensely intimate. The verbs change entirely. It involves fashioning, forming from dust, planting a garden, and literally breathing life directly into the nostrils of this new entity.
It is tactile, it is messy, it is close-up. It's the demiurge getting his hands dirty in the clay.
The shift from the spoken word to the physical hands is startling.
It is. And to explain this profound difference between the distant, impersonal commands of Chapter 1 and the intimate, tactile craftsmanship of Chapter 2, the author introduces a truly fascinating concept.
The buffer zone.
The idea of the buffer zone, yes.
Okay.
The text argues that the events of Genesis 2 are not actually happening in the muddy, physical, waking world at all.
I loved this conceptual leap. It changes everything.
The author suggests that Genesis 2 is taking place in a non-physical, completely holographic realm. They compare the experience of Eden to a lucid dream.
When I was reading this section, I literally stopped and asked myself to completely reimagine everything I thought I knew about the Garden of Eden.
It's hard to shake the traditional imagery.
It is. But the text demands that we stop picturing a lush, physical garden with real gritty dirt under your fingernails and real rough bark on the trees.
No apples to bite into physically.
Right. The author describes Eden as a place where a deity is pulling concepts and forms into being out of thin air, using what the text calls technological aid, like a slideshow.
A slideshow of reality.
It isn't a farm. It's a pristine, glowing holodeck. It's a virtual reality sandbox.
A virtual reality sandbox is perhaps the most accurate, modern equivalent to what the author is describing.
It feels very sci-fi.
It does, and the text is very explicit about the sequencing here, which is crucial. It states that in this non-corporeal dreaming realm, Adam exists as a living soul, long before he possesses a dense physical body that walks the earth.
So he's just consciousness at this point.
Yes. He is present in the buffer zone before the actual physical manifestations of plants and animals have populated the material world outside.
So if we run with the VR analogy, Adam is essentially sitting in a sensory deprivation tank wearing a VR headset.
Floating in the buffer zone.
He's existing in pure consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
And the deity is running a simulation, pulling up these holographic 3D models of animals and plants on a cosmic slideshow.
Showing him the templates.
And what is Adam doing? He is looking at these glowing wireframe forms, and he is assigning names to them.
He is categorizing the forms.
Exactly. The text literally says he is effectively seeing the matrix.
Which is such a powerful phrase.
And by building these naming conventions, by looking at a form and deciding what sound will represent it, he is actually programming the matrix as he sees fit.
He's defining the variables.
He is writing the foundational source code of reality by assigning linguistic values to concepts before those concepts even physically exist in the dirt of the earth.
The implications of that idea are staggering, especially when we bridge it into modern cognitive science.
Oh, how so?
Well, if we accept this premise that Eden was not a physical place of agriculture, but a holographic programming space for consciousness, it actually answers a question that linguists and developmental psychologists have debated for decades.
Which is?
Why do human infants acquire the incredibly complex rules of language with such terrifying speed and accuracy?
Yeah, oh man. It's true. Babies learn languages in a way that adult brains just struggle to replicate. It's almost magical.
It is. A toddler can pick up syntax and grammar rules without ever formally studying them.
They just absorb it.
Right. And the author's mythos begs us to understand that language feels so incredibly natural to human life because it was entirely pre-programmed for us.
We already know it.
We are not inventing language from scratch in a vacuum. We are downloading an existing architecture from that buffer zone.
The text gives this wonderfully simple example to illustrate this point.
The shapes.
Yeah, it talks about a baby learning basic shapes. It says that things were made deliberately easy for us so that we can pick up, even as tiny infants, what a triangle is and inherently understand exactly how a triangle differs from a square.
Let's examine that example deeply, because it's profound.
Yeah, break it down.
According to the logic of the text, when an infant looks at a block and learns the difference between the square and the triangle, they are not just memorizing the physical properties of a wooden toy in the messy physical world.
They aren't just learning pointy versus flat.
Right. They are unconsciously accessing the pre-programmed matrix. They are tapping into that foundational, perfect dictionary of forms that was established by Adam in that non-physical Edenic buffer zone.
So language isn't just a tool we invented to survive in the jungle.
No.
Language is a retrieved memory of a holographic slideshow.
Precisely. A retrieved memory of a pristine simulation.
Okay, my mind is slightly blown by that. Language is a retrieved memory of a holographic slideshow.
It shifts your whole perspective on talking.
But of course we know by looking out our windows that things did not stay pristine.
No, the simulation degraded.
We're definitely not living in a perfect holodeck anymore. Because if Eden was the successful, harmonious programming of the Matrix, where consciousness agreed on what the source code meant, well, the text then violently transitions us to the ultimate system crash of human history.
The Tower of Babel.
The Tower of Babel.
The collapse of the shared reality. It is the inevitable tragedy of leaving the buffer zone and entering the physical world.
And, just like they did with Eden, the author completely reframes the story of Babel.
It's not about a building.
No, it wasn't just a quaint moral fable about arrogant, ancient people trying to build a really tall physical skyscraper out of mud and bricks to physically reach the clouds.
That's the Sunday school version again.
Right. The text argues that Babel was mankind's desperate, highly coordinated attempt to build a systematic dictionary of reality.
They wanted to formalize the code.
They realized they had lost the purity of the slideshow, and they were trying to build a conceptual bridge back to that primordial buffer zone state. They wanted to hack their way back into the holodeck.
And pay close attention to the materials they were using for this construction.
The bricks.
Right. But the text explicitly states that the building blocks of this tower were not physical stones or mortar, but the various kinds of conceptual elements that we recognize in languages today.
They were building with words.
They were dealing in syntax, grammar, definitions, and categories.
They were trying to construct a perfect, unassailable language that mapped reality flawlessly.
Yes.
They were attempting to reverse engineer the source code of the universe so they could become equal to the programmers.
But the project was doomed before the first conceptual brick was laid.
Why? Why couldn't they pull it off?
The text suggests that the failure of Babel was not an angry intervention by a jealous god striking the tower down with lightning.
Right. It wasn't a punishment.
No, it was a failure pre-encoded into the system of humanity itself.
And here is the brutal, undeniable truth the author hits us with. Humankind has fundamentally not been made to agree on things.
It's just not in our DNA.
It is simply not in our nature to maintain a unified reality. The author writes this brilliant observation. If you give a group of people enough time, two opposing opinions will inevitably emerge on absolutely anything.
On literally anything.
And if you zoom out and give it even more time, say a few millennia,
Yeah.
you end up with our modern fractured world.
The world we live in now.
You end up with 8 billion people who, as the text points out, can't even agree on what the word here refers to, or even who is allowed to use the first singular pronoun.
Let's unpack the philosophy of language embedded in that brilliant observation, because it is incredibly sharp.
The word here.
Yeah, let's take the word here. It is what linguists call an indexical word.
What does that mean?
It means its entire meaning changes depending on who is speaking it and where they are.
Oh, I see.
If I say, I am here, here means my side of the desk.
And if I say, I am here, here means my side of the desk.
Exactly. The word itself has no fixed anchor in objective reality. The text acknowledges the fundamental flaw of language. Words are supposed to act as signifiers that point to a signified meaning, a true underlying objective concept.
A perfect one-to-one map.
But because of our fractured, highly subjective human nature, that signified meaning is endlessly, hopelessly fragmented.
Because my here is not your here.
Exactly. A perfect dictionary of reality is a mathematical impossibility.
Think about the absolute heartbreaking irony of that. Let's connect this back to the holodeck of Eden for a second.
Okay.
Language was originally given to us in this pristine slideshow buffer zone to make understanding reality easy and unified.
It was a tool of harmony.
It was designed to be the ultimate tool for harmony. But the second we left the buffer zone and entered the dense physical world, language mutated.
It adapted to the dirt.
It became the exact tool that fractured our shared reality. The very building blocks of unity became the weapons of our disagreement.
It is the great tragic paradox of human communication. We are constantly using the fractured remnants of the matrix to argue with each other about what the matrix actually is.
We're just throwing broken pieces of code at each other.
That's exactly what we're doing. And this systemic, inescapable failure of language, this inability of 8 billion people to agree on the definition of the word here, transitions us beautifully into the final and perhaps most surprising and meta section of the author's entire essay.
Oh man, the ending of this text is an absolutely wild ride.
It really pulls the rug out from under you.
Because we have just spent all this time zooming out, talking about the global fragmentation of language across 8 billion people, the collapse of ancient empires, the cosmos,
Huge scale.
massive scale, and then without warning, the author suddenly zooms all the way in.
To them,
Yes. They get incredibly personal about the intentional fragmentation of their own essay. They just completely, shamelessly drop the fourth wall and stare directly at the reader.
it is a very jarring stylistic choice, but it's deeply intentional.
The author plainly admits to the reader that they have not delivered a neat, cohesive takeaway point.
They confess it.
If you were looking for a clean thesis statement wrapped in a neat little bow at the end of this text, you're going to be severely disappointed.
They literally write to the reader, this is purposefully confusing you.
They admit they are actively trying to get the reader on the exact same page as their own confused brain.
Which is such a weird goal for a writer.
But they say that the disorientation you feel reading the text is the exact same kind of vertigo their brain gets into when trying to deal with massive, overwhelming topics like the unpronounceable name of God, Gnostic dyads, and holographic realities.
They aren't holding back the answer from you. They are demonstrating that there isn't one.
That's the brilliance of it. And then they reveal their ultimate goal. They write, I hope I made a grasshopper out of you.
The grasshopper mindset.
The grasshopper mindset.
It is a brilliant, entirely unexpected metaphor for intellectual survival.
Yes. The text explains that instead of jumping to firm, immovable conclusions, instead of trying to build another doomed Tower of Babel, a dictionary where everything has to make perfect, rigid sense, a grasshopper behaves entirely differently.
They don't build towers.
No. A grasshopper jumps to different conversation islands. They speak and write and explore without a strict, unyielding aim. They land, They observe and they jump again.
Which is, in essence, a brilliant defense of intellectual flexibility and humility.
How so?
Well, when human beings encounter overwhelming complexity, our deepest instinct driven by that babble urge is to lock it down.
We want to trap it.
We want to define it precisely, to categorize it, to conquer it with language. The author is suggesting that this rigid instinct is exactly what caused Babel to fall in the first place.
The weight of the rigidity breaks the tower.
Exactly. The grasshopper mindset is the antidote to the hubris of the Tower of Babel. By jumping lightly from concept to concept, from conversation island to conversation island, we avoid the trap of rigid dogma. We remain in motion.
I really, truly love this conversation islands analogy. Think about how much psychological pressure that relieves.
It's a huge relief.
For you listening right now, the author is giving you permission to let go. You don't have to have the ultimate definitive answer to how the physical universe was created.
You don't need the final equation.
You don't have to perfectly logically reconcile the contradictions between Genesis 1 and Genesis 2. You don't have to know how the ancient priests pronounced Havayah.
You just have to keep jumping.
You just have to keep exploring the islands without demanding they form a single continent.
And the author makes one final, profound theological connection to justify this erratic grasshopper behavior.
Right, tying it back to the divine.
They elevate this junkum around from a mere coping mechanism to a divine attribute. They state that by jumping around without a rigid aim, you are actually mirroring how the ultimate source, God, operates in the world.
And what does the text say about how God operates?
According to the text, God makes himself deliberately hidden whenever someone points at him too precisely.
Hidden when someone points too precisely. That line gives me absolute chills.
It's so evocative.
It feels so true to the human experience of trying to find meaning.
And if we take that line and connect it back to the very beginning of our deep dive, it brings the entire sweeping essay full circle in a masterstroke of logic.
It really ties the whole room together.
Think about where we started today. We started with the name Havayah, a word that fundamentally cannot be pinned down with a phonetic pronunciation.
And the zip file we couldn't play.
The moment you try to point your audio software at it, the sound hides from you. And now, at the very end of the journey, we learn that the ultimate truth of the universe operates using the exact same mechanism. If you point at reality with a rigid definition, if you try to capture it perfectly in a Babel-like dictionary, it vanishes, it fractures, it hides.
The moment you think you've caught it, you're holding an empty jar.
Exactly.
So let's take a step back and look at the sheer scale of the journey this author just took us on.
It's a lot of ground.
We started staring at a compressed zip file of time, an unpronounceable acronym of past, present, and future being.
Silent and massive.
We rolled up our sleeves and did the math, exploring the ancient gematria of 26, proving the paradox that total completeness is actually the 1 multiplied by 2.
The closed loop of conversation.
That realization dragged us into the ancient cosmology of the Gnostic demiurge and the step-down transformers of the dyads.
Bridging the gap to the material world.
Which inevitably led us to look up at the sky, realizing the ancient lettuce in Genesis might not be a trinity, but a masculine moon and a feminine sun, resulting in the creation of Adam as a walking, breathing cosmic eclipse.
A celestial blueprint.
And from that celestial height, we descended into the non-physical holographic VR sandbox of Eden, a buffer zone where humanity first learned the source code of reality through a glowing slideshow of forms.
Programming the Matrix.
We then watched that pristine system crash violently at the Tower of Babel, as the dream of a perfect dictionary shattered into 8 billion indexical disagreements.
The tragic flaw of language.
And finally, after all that structure and collapse, we landed safely on the Conversation Islands, adopting the humble grasshopper mindset to navigate a universe that actively hides the moment we try to define it.
It is a breathtaking, exhaustive sequence of ideas.
It is. And I don't know about you, but it completely changes how I look at the words I use every single day.
It makes you hyper-aware of your own speech.
It brings me all the way back to that dictionary I mentioned. We desperately want our words to be precise engineering tools. We want them to lock perfectly onto reality, to hold it still so we can understand it.
We want control.
But this text forcefully suggests that the murky, shifting waters of language aren't a bug in the system. They are a necessary feature of existence.
Absolutely. The ambiguity is the point. And that leaves us with a critical final thought to mull over, drawing on everything the text has shown us today.
Get me with it.
Think about the implications of a reality that behaves this way. If the universe actively, deliberately hides its ultimate truths the moment we point at them too precisely. And if human language was fundamentally pre-encoded to fracture into 8 billion different subjective disagreements,
Yeah.
maybe our inability to fully understand each other isn't a flaw in our design.
Wow. That flips the whole script of human history.
Maybe our linguistic friction is the exact mechanism that keeps the infinite mystery of creation alive. If we could perfectly define the universe would end.
Because we'd have solved the equation.
Exactly. So, for you listening, the next time you find yourself struggling to find the exact right words to explain how you feel, feeling frustrated that your dictionary has failed you and the person across from you just doesn't understand, ask yourself a question.
What's the question?
Are you really failing to communicate? Or are you just experiencing a perfect, unpronounceable moment of Havayah?